She said she missed her single phase. Then she threw her wedding ring at me like it burned her finger. 3 years later, my phone rang. My lawyer's voice was calm. "Ethan, you've just inherited $63 million. That's when she panicked. The same woman who walked out when I was dying, now crying over the man she once called too expensive to love. I remember every night alone in that cold Ohio house, counting coins for ramen, driving drunk kids just to keep the lights on. Now the lights are back on, and she's standing outside, begging to come home. But some doors don't open twice. This is my story. The truth about betrayal, survival, and the price of revenge. Hit subscribe and stay with me. Because when my lawyer called, everything changed. Before that call flipped my life, mornings were simple and hard. The kitchen smelled like old wood and fried eggs from a decade ago. I'd thumb through a stack of bills that looked thicker than the Bible, then pour gas station coffee into a chipped mug that still said "Best Husband." The thermostat sat at 62 because heat costs more than pride. I'd stand by the sink watching frost spider the window, wondering how a house can be full of memories and still feel empty. The mail always came with red stamps and short tempers. Friends texted less. The dog across the street barked more. I'd take one breath, then another, like it was a job. That's how survival feels. Quiet and ugly, but steady. I'd touch the groove in the table where her ring once spun, and my voice would come out low, like it belonged to someone older. "I made it," I'd say to nobody. "I survived. Alone." Still, a man needs work. I'm Ethan Miller. Grease under the nails, spine made of stubborn. I used to fix engines, coax life out of machines other folks gave up on. After treatment, the shop cut my hours, and I learned a different kind of engine, the Uber app. Nights, I'd slide behind the wheel of my old Ford, the kind you nurse like an aging dog, and run airport runs for kids who smelled like whiskey and freedom. They'd spill their problems in my back seat and tip in quarters. Roads I'd known my whole life felt new at 2 a.m., slick with rain and radio static. Somewhere on Route 35, I caught my face in the rear view, gaunt, scar-soft along my neck, eyes that had seen the bottom and kept driving. The truck hummed. The meter blinked. In that little glass, I met the man who didn't quit. The moment landed like a punch and a prayer. It didn't start with the truck. It started in a doctor's office that smelled like bleach and fear. The chart said lymphoma. The nurse said, "We'll fight." My wife said she missed her single phase. There are sentences you never forget. That one lives in my ribs. She stood in our hallway, suitcase open like a mouth. "I can't do this," she said, looking everywhere but me. "You're too expensive to love." Sometimes betrayal is loud. Sometimes it's a whisper with perfect nails. I followed her to the door, hoping for a look back, a pause, a miracle. The house held its breath. Then the knob turned, wood slapped wood, and the sound cracked the air. Her keys slipped, hit the porch, and bounced. A sharp little bell that told the truth before the papers did. I stood there holding a diagnosis in one hand and silence in the other, and the world, our world, went small. After she left, the night stretched long and clean, like a highway with no exits. Dinner was whatever was 2 for $1 and didn't require thinking. Ramen curls, the steam fogging my glasses, the plastic fork soft from heat. Outside, Ohio rain stitched the streetlights together. Inside, I counted breaths, then counted dollars. There's a kind of math you learn when you're broke. Gas enough to reach the morning, pills split in half, pride swallowed whole. At the corner store, the clerk with the Reds cap knew my routine. No small talk, exact change, eyes on the counter. I'd tip my head, pour coffee that tasted like burnt hope, and study the lottery tickets I never bought. On the worst nights, I'd drive empty roads just to feel the tires carry me somewhere that wasn't here. And under the buzzing lights of aisle 3, I'd tip a jar of coins, pick out quarters one by one, and pay for time. Then life blinked. A Tuesday, cold and honest, and a knock that didn't sound like trouble. I opened the door to a man in a tailored coat, the kind that doesn't visit my street. "Daniel Freeman," he said, handing me a card that felt heavier than paper. We sat at my wobbly table. He opened a folder thick with answers I didn't know I needed. Medical notes, a name, Dr. Marcus Chen, a stranger who'd watched fighters like me from a distance and decided one of us should never worry again. The room got smaller as the number got bigger. 63 million, Daniel said, like an anchor dropping in a storm. I laughed once, a broken sound, then sat hard. The coffee trembled in my cup. The bills on the counter didn't move, but somehow they weren't the boss anymore. A new clock started ticking in that moment, fast, loud, and full of reckoning. And somewhere, she felt it too. That number didn't just change my bank account, it rewired the story I'd been telling myself. Daniel said Dr. Chen chose someone who survived alone. No family, no safety net, no soft place to land. I looked around my sagging kitchen and felt something like shame and pride shake hands. Most folks get picked because they're connected. I got picked because I wasn't. The truth crawled under my skin. All those nights counting coins, all those drives at 2 a.m., all those empty chairs, I thought they were proof I'd lost. Turns out they were receipts that I'd endured. I laughed once, dry and surprised, and the sound echoed off the cabinets. Alone, I said to the room, was the key. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't noble. It was survival with cracked knuckles and quiet mornings. And somehow, that's what opened the door. A stranger's mercy met my stubborn heart, and for the first time in years, I felt the floor hold. Mercy is warm. Money is gasoline. Daniel's voice stayed measured. This will bring shadows, Ethan. Be careful. Don't feed the fire. I heard the warning in the way a man hears thunder when the sky still looks clear. Lay low, keep your circle small, and say less than you know. After he left, I sat with it. What happens when a broke man becomes a target overnight? I set the phone face down, as if the screen could attract trouble, and watched a memory roll loose, a gold band skittering across this very floor. Back then, that ring was a verdict. Now it felt like evidence. The silence in the house wasn't empty. It was a test. Could I stay still while small-town gossip sniffed around my porch? Could I swallow the urge to call her and say, "You won't believe this?" The answer slid in slow and sturdy. I'd believe it for both of us. I'd keep my mouth shut and my eyes open. Silence is hard work, so I took it to the Rusty Nail, a bar that knows every divorce in Montgomery County. The beer came cold, the stool groaned, and the neon over the mirror hummed like an old friend. A couple of guys from the garage lifted a chin in my direction, then looked away. That's small-town math. They know, they pretend they don't. I studied the wood grain, the score from last night's game, the way the bartender wiped the same spot until it shined. Then I heard it, her laugh. It's funny what the body remembers. Mine knew before my brain did. The sound that once meant home now felt like warning, and the moment I turned, everything I thought I'd buried came back to life. I turned and saw them in the corner booth, lights carving their faces from the dark. Veronica with the perfect hair and the practiced smile. Derek with the salesman's jaw and the too clean watch. My mouth went dry, my back went straight, and a lifetime of yes sir, no sir fell off my shoulders. The room narrowed to that booth and the road that led there. There's a difference between stumbling into a fight and walking to the table. I slid into the seat across from them like I'd been invited. Derek leaned back, chest puffed the way men do when they've never had to prove anything. Veronica's eyes went cool, inventorying the version of me that didn't die. "We're having a private conversation," he said, voice loud enough to be brave. I kept mine quiet. So am I. No speeches, no throat clearing. I laid my phone on the table, screen down, and hit record with my thumb. One party state, one party truth. The bartender glanced our way, then tended the taps. In the mirror behind them, I caught 3 reflections and 1,000 choices. I didn't need to win the room. I needed the room to witness. The air felt heavy, like right before a summer storm when the flag stops moving. This wasn't about noise, it was about evidence, so I said less, and listened more. They started polite, the way people do right before they twist the knife. Derek dropped buzzwords like breadcrumbs, competency, judgment, long-term effects. And Veronica fed him lines about me being erratic, like we were rehearsing a play where I was the villain she discovered too late. Then came the phrase, chemo brain, casual as a shrug, ugly as a slur. They weren't just attacking my wallet, they were rewriting my illness to fit their story. My hand closed around the beer bottle until the glass felt thin, knuckles whitening like snow on blacktop. I tasted metal. I smelled hospital soap. I heard the beeping that marked the hardest nights of my life. Derek said a judge would have to question my capacity. Veronica nodded like a metronome. Each word climbed the ladder. Annoyance, anger, something colder. I wanted to roar. I didn't. I let the room record them for me, their voices, their plan, their comfort with my pain. Rage steadied, sharp and useful, waiting for its turn. Rage steadied into aim. I kept my voice low, steady as a socket wrench. "Quick note," I said, sliding the phone where they could both see it. "Ohio's a one-party consent state. I'm that party." The word recording landed like a brick in a glass sink. Derek's smile folded. Veronica's eyes did that fast math people do when they realize the door they walked through just locked behind them. The bar's neon painted their faces a cheap red, and for once, I liked the color on them. "So here's what happens," I said, every syllable measured. "You withdraw your competency claim. You tell Tiffany to delete the lies, and then you leave me alone." Silence swelled. Somewhere behind us, a ball game found the bottom of the ninth. "Or?" Derek asked, throat tight. I took a sip, let it burn. "Or that judge hears this tape before your lawyer does." The room didn't move. They did, just enough to tell me I'd hit bone. I went home with a clean clock and slept like a man who'd stacked his tools just right. Morning proved me wrong. 17 missed calls, 30-something texts, notifications that kept multiplying like rabbits. A friend from the shop. "You seeing this?" My cousin. "Need me to say something?" Then the posts, screenshots of screenshots, strangers arguing about a life they didn't live. 50,000 shares in a town with half that many people. The words bled together until one sentence stood out like a bruise. "He faked the cancer." I read it 3 times to make sure it was as stupid the third as it was the first. The coffee tasted like pennies. I wanted to swing at air. Instead, I scrolled and watched the same lie wear a dozen outfits. Folks love a conspiracy when the truth is boring. I set the phone down before the day swallowed me whole. If they wanted a show, they'd have to buy tickets. I had work to do. Work started in a room lined with law books and quiet confidence. Daniel had the local paper folded to a headline that felt personal, and a laptop open to the Post doing laps around town. "We fight," he said, calm as always, "but we do it clean." The plan was simple, like all hard things. Document, corroborate, and move with the patience of a man who's rebuilt an engine bolt by bolt. Advocacy groups were sniffing around. Cameras wanted a soundbite. "We give them none," Daniel said. "Paper talks. Emotion waits." He slid a legal pad toward me. "List every doctor, every appointment, every scrap of proof." I thought of that bar tape in my pocket and how good it would feel to light them up today. He shook his head before I spoke. "We don't spill gas on a fire. We guide it." I exhaled through my teeth and nodded. Sometimes the loudest punch is paperwork. "All right," I said. "Let's do it your way." Doing it his way meant opening boxes I'd taped shut the day I learned how to breathe again. I pulled the folder marked treatment, the one with hospital letterhead and dates I can't forget if I try. Appointment cards bent at the corners, lab results that smelled faintly of toner, discharge notes with coffee stains from nights my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dr. Martinez's name showed up like mile markers on a long road. I laid out the chemo schedule, 6 months, then radiation, then a type of quiet I still don't have a word for. In the middle of it all, a photo slid free. Me in a reclining chair, bald as a cue ball, giving a thumbs up I didn't feel. It hit the table face up, a hard slap that turned the room small. That picture didn't need a caption. It was evidence and memory and a dare to any fool who said I'd lied. I snapped the file shut and felt the ground get steady. Steady gets tested the minute you hit the street. That night I clocked in because money doesn't care about your reputation. The Ford coughed awake, radio low, rain ticking the windshield in Morse code. Third ride in, guess who pulls my door? Derek, loud on his phone, the kind of man who assumes drivers are furniture. No, listen, he said, voice slick. The inheritance is real. If we play it right, we disappear. I took the long way like a professional. He fed details to whoever was on the other end. Dates, the hearing, how public opinion had shifted on cue. My rear view held him like a fish in a bowl, restless, expensive, dumb. Streetlights slid over his jaw while he promised a future he hadn't paid for. He didn't ask if I could hear. He didn't care. We rolled into a neighborhood where lawns hire their own barbers. He ended the call. Thanks, he muttered, already moving. Sure, I said, memorizing the address. Anytime. I drove 2 blocks past that neat lawn and pulled over under a busted streetlight. The address sat in my head like a hot coin. I called Daniel. He's planning to disappear, I said, giving him the street, the house color, the kind of money that lives behind hedges. We'll document it, he answered, steady as bedrock. Run a background on the woman pushing the lies, Tiffany Walsh, I added. Influencer type, smells like rented followers. Paper rustled on his end. We'll pull records, but hear me, Ethan, don't do anything illegal. I watched Rain make quick work of a fresh driveway. I'm not reckless, I said. I'm effective. Silence, then a sigh that sounded like a man who's seen good cases ruined by pride. Effectiveness sometimes looks a lot like impatience, he said. I put the truck in drive. I'll keep it clean, I told him, and meant it. But clean doesn't mean gentle. It means proof, timing, and knowing exactly where to press. Clean meant staying quiet and watching. That evening, I parked down the block from Veronica's townhouse, the kind of place where every house has the same smile. Headlights swept the street, white Mercedes, glossy and late. Tiffany stepped out like a commercial, platinum hair, phone glued to her palm. She hugged Veronica on the porch with the warmth of a camera flash. Inside, they spread papers on the dining table, folders, tablets, a laptop glow that turned their faces movie blue. Through the window, I saw hands pointing, lips tightening, the body language of people who think they're owed. Derek arrived last, adjusting his jacket like he expected applause. 3 silhouettes leaned over the same plan, their shadows crossing, merging, taking turns at the pen. The TV murmured in the next room. The neighborhood slept. I sat in the dark and memorized the scene. The conspirators, the props, the stage. Sometimes a man doesn't need to kick the door. He just needs the lights to stay on. By morning, Daniel had homework for me. Texts with links, bullet points, and the kind of facts that don't blink. 2 divorces trailing smoke, wage garnishments, a BMW that belonged more to the bank than to Derek. Complaints from exes about missing cash and asset games that never made it to court but tattooed a pattern. The picture got clear fast. A man in love with the mirror and allergic to the bill. I scrolled until my thumb hurt, feeling a familiar scent rise off the screen. Panic money. I know that smell. I carried it for years in glove compartments and jacket pockets. The difference? Mine came from hospital bills and empty fridges. His came from bad bets and cheap charm. Motive, Daniel texted. 1 word, heavy as a steel wrench. I saved every file, every date. You don't argue with a man like Derek. You line up his past behind him and let it push. The truth, once stacked, makes its own gravity. Gravity pulled us to the courthouse like iron to a magnet. The steps were slick with October and opinion. Hand-painted signs bobbed. Cancer fraud. Justice for real survivors. The local news vans idled like buzzards, their dishes craned toward anyone willing to bleed on camera. A guy in a camo jacket shook his head as I passed. A woman with kind eyes squeezed my arm like a mother at a funeral. I kept moving. Breath in, breath out, boots finding the middle of each step. Daniel matched my pace, a metronome in a suit. On the landing, I paused just long enough to feel the chill bite my ears and the weight of 100 eyes decide who I was. Then I went through the doors into air that smelled like mop water and old decisions. If anger is gasoline, resolve is a seatbelt. I buckled mine and walked toward the metal detectors, ready to show these folks what proof sounds like. Inside, everything looked smaller. Veronica had dressed in navy and humility, Derek in nerves and cologne. Their lawyer, sharp jaw, sharp heels, stood like a spear beside them. We took our table. When the bailiff called, the room shuffled into respect. Judge Morrison entered, 60-something with that seasoned calm that makes liars sweat. Petitioner's counsel started first, delivering her lines with clean edges. We questioned Mr. Miller's capacity to manage a substantial inheritance. Words like erratic, impaired judgment, public concern floated across the wood. I watched the jurist's pen move, not fast, not slow. Then the exhibits, social posts, a hired opinion dressed up as medicine, printouts meant to stain. Daniel leaned in, voice low. We go second. We go steady. I nodded and kept my hands flat on the table. This wasn't a bar. This was a scale. And right now, their side was stacking feathers and calling it iron. Let them. The heavier evidence was about to arrive, and it had my name on it. Their side went first, and the playbook was obvious. A doctor I'd never met took the stand in a crisp suit and careful voice. He spoke in big words about cognitive decline like he was reading off a menu. Fatigue, forgetfulness, poor judgment, then waved at articles printed from the internet like they were holy writ. He never said my name with any weight. He said patience like Mr. Miller, the way a weatherman says rain, distant and dry. The lawyer fed him questions that kept the road tilted against me. Heads in the gallery nodded like dashboard dolls. I felt the room warm with doubt, the way a garage heats up when the engine's working too hard. The expert didn't lie. He just never bothered to know me. Still, his tone did the damage it was built to do. By the time he stepped down, the needle of suspicion was buried in the red. I could feel it in my ribs. We were behind on the scoreboard. Behind doesn't mean beaten. Daniel stood, sleeves sharp, voice steady, and rolled the cart with our files to the center of the room. Exhibits A through H, he said, like a man laying out honest tools. Treatment timeline, appointment cards, insurance denials with numbers that still make me wince, and a stack of hospital bills thick enough to chock a truck. He didn't perform, he presented. Then came the screen, and the bailiff dimmed the lights, and there I was, bald, pale, tubing taped to my arm, giving a weak thumbs up I don't remember. The sound in the room thinned to a thread. You can argue opinions. You can't argue a needle in a vein. Daniel kept it simple. Dates, drugs, side effects, the long road back. He didn't say I was competent. He showed the work of a man who never quit. When the lights came up, chairs creaked, throats cleared. The balance shifted a hair, the way a jack finally catches the frame. Then Dr. Martinez took the stand, and the whole story got a spine. No theatrics. Just a real doctor who knew my file better than I did. She walked the court through the diagnosis, stage 3 lymphoma, then the plan, 6 months of chemo, targeted radiation, checks every few weeks until the scans turned from storm to clearing. She talked about the nights I couldn't keep water down, the days my blood work said stay home, and the stubborn streak that made me show up anyway. No big medical terms, no hedge. She looked at the judge like two adults talking about a hard thing. This patient is real. His disease was real. His treatment was real, she said, crisp as a torque spec. It wasn't pity, it was fact. I watched Veronica blink fast, the way people do when reality won't take their bribe. The gallery got quiet in a different way, respect replacing gossip. For the first time all morning, I felt the ground tilt our direction. Facts have cousins. Daniel called them next. Credit reports, court filings, letters from payroll about a wage garnishment that wouldn't quit. 2 divorces with the same smoke, assets moved, money missing, promises in pieces. He didn't smear, he stacked. A BMW payment 90 days late, a card maxed out on dinners that photograph well. Each sheet had a date, a source, a clean edge. Pattern, Daniel said, letting the word sit. The judge's pen paused mid-stroke. I didn't look at Derek because the whole room did it for me, heads turning like a tide. He shifted in his chair, collar suddenly tight, mouth flat. You could feel it. The narrative slipped its leash. This wasn't about a fragile ex-husband anymore. This was about motive. Why a man who treats bills like suggestions would salivate over someone else's fortune. The weight of their case started leaking through the seams. For once, I didn't need to say a word. His past did the talking. And then we played the part they never planned for. Daniel nodded. I placed my phone on the evidence tray. The clerk patched it to the speakers. Bar noise filled the courtroom. Ice, a game on low, a stool scraping, then their voices clean as a confession. Derek, all confidence. Chemo brain, a judge will have to question him. Veronica, cool as tile. We push the competency angle. No spin, no edits, just the sound of two people carving me into a payday. I watched it hit them in real time. Veronica's face drained, then flushed. Derek's jaw found a new shape. The gallery didn't gasp. It inhaled and forgot to exhale. The judge leaned back, eyes on the ceiling like she was measuring patience in inches. The expert's fancy words shrank to pocket size. Truth doesn't need volume. It needs tape. When the audio clicked off, the room stayed quiet long enough to hear the clock. The turn wasn't dramatic. It was decisive, and it was earned. When the tape stopped echoing, the room felt like a garage after the engine finally shuts off. Hot, quiet, waiting. Their lawyer tried one last pass, some polished plea about concern and stability, but the words slid off the bench like rain off good wax. Judge Morrison straightened the papers, looked over her glasses, and called it. Petition denied. Their claim tossed, their costs assigned to them, not me. The clerk's voice made it official. The gavel made it real. 2 words ended a war. But outside those courthouse doors, a different battle was waiting. That sound hit me square in the chest. Not fireworks, more like a seatbelt clicking home. Daniel squeezed my shoulder once, the way men congratulate without making a scene. Across the aisle, Derek went still. Veronica stared at the table as if it might change the score. It didn't. We stood. The door opened. For the first time in years, I wasn't defending my right to exist. I wasn't begging anyone to believe my pain. The judge did. The record did. The room did. I won. Winning doesn't fix the air outside. The courthouse doors swung and the noise poured in. Chants, cameras, the same signs painted with the same certainty. A reporter shoved a mic close enough to read the scuffs. "How does it feel to beat the system?" he asked, already sure of his headline. I kept my hands in my pockets and my mouth closed. Back home, the TV made me a villain in half a sentence and a mystery in the other half. The phone buzzed until it felt like a toothache. I turned everything off and sat in the quiet, the kind of quiet that sounds like a distant train. The verdict took the weight off my back. It didn't put peace in my bones. I walked to the window, saw my reflection in the glass, just a man in a small Ohio house that somehow held both victory and ache. "I'm not the victim anymore," I said to that ghost, "but I'm not free yet." Freedom didn't arrive the next morning either. A buzz on the nightstand, a bank alert glowing blue in the dark, deposit received. I opened it with the same care I use for a rusted bolt. The number stretched long as winter. I waited for a feeling I'd recognize. Joy, panic, something. My hands shook anyway. I brewed coffee slow, counted to 10 before each sip, and set the phone face down like it might bite. I could have paid every bill twice before breakfast. I could have bought a new truck before lunch. Instead, I walked the house. I touched the scar on the banister, the wobbly table, the old photo on the fridge that still had both of us smiling like fools. A clock I didn't know I owned started ticking in my chest, steady, deliberate. "Not yet," it said. "Control is a muscle. Mine needed proof." I opened my laptop, made a list, and didn't spend a cent. Sometimes power is the thing you don't touch. Power needs focus. I pointed mine at the loudest lie. Tiffany's feed looked perfect if you didn't stare. Beach photos that never show sand on the feet, giveaways with winners who never exist, a follower count that jumped like a bad heart. I watched the numbers the way I used to watch oil pressure, steady, then suddenly not. Brands tagged and untagged, posts edited after midnight, comments from bots with names like scrambled cereal. Daniel's team pulled threads. Some led to purchased engagement, some to companies that were P.O. boxes with dreams. An old FTC warning surfaced like a shark's fin, quiet but unmistakable. I didn't cheer. I bookmarked. We built a file that read like a weather report. High pressure, thin clouds, storm coming. When a house is mostly mirrors, all it takes is one cracked pane to show the drywall. "Her empire's a card trick," I told Daniel. He nodded. "Then we show the hands." And just like that, the table started shaking. Hands have patterns, so do lives. While Tiffany's gloss began to dull, we turned to the person who taught me what silence weighs. Veronica's inbox told a cleaner story than her mouth ever did. Late-night threads with her boss, calendar invites that lined up a little too neatly with hotel receipts, marketing expenses that always solved personal problems. No smoking gun, but a lot of warm barrels. I scrolled and felt nothing volcanic, just a slow, useful heat. This wasn't about hurting her back. It was about drawing a straight line through the mess. I printed what mattered, dated what moved, and slid each piece into a red folder I kept on the top shelf. The color helped me remember, handle with care, and don't mistake anger for accuracy. When the last page settled, I closed the cover and heard the soft click it made. Not revenge, readiness. I set the folder in plain sight. Some stories tell themselves if you give them a spine. Readiness turns into action when you know where to press. Daniel lined up the paperwork. I signed until my hand cramped. The car note, the maxed card, the arrears on alimony, we bought them all and rolled them into one clean package under Miller Holdings. I didn't need to yell. I needed a ledger. By noon, a flatbed eased down Derrick Street like a quiet decision. The driver wore work gloves and no attitude. My kind of man. Neighbors peeked from blinds as the BMW's alarm chirped, then surrendered. Sun high, camera phones higher. Derrick came sprinting barefoot, half a shirt and a whole lot of outrage, shouting words that don't change contracts. The hauler tilted, the straps clicked, the hood kissed daylight, and the car rose like a lesson. I didn't show up. The paperwork already had. Power doesn't always look like muscle. Sometimes it's a signature and a schedule. Sometimes it's a man learning the difference between mine and yours in front of his own mailbox. The tow truck hadn't cleared the block when my phone lit up. Derrick, voice skipping gears. What the hell do you think you're doing? I let him burn through the first tank. Rights, lawyers, threats, then downshifted to calm. I bought your debt, I said. All of it. It's consolidated now. He laughed the way men laugh when they've never read the fine print. You can't. I did. I pulled up the file, numbers sitting neat as soldiers. You have 30 days to pay in full. He went quiet, air through teeth. Then I gave him the only math that mattered. You owe me $230,000. The words hung there like a stoplight he couldn't run. He tried on another tone, friendly, then desperate, then mean. None of them fit. This is harassment, he said. This is collections, I answered. See you in 30. I ended the call and stared at my hands, steady. Some fights are won with volume. Others end with a deadline. Deadlines teach discipline. I used that same rhythm on Tiffany. No rage, just receipts. We packaged the follower audits, the midnight edits, the pretend giveaways, the sponsored posts that never shipped. Daniel's team sent the dossier to every brand she'd hashtagged and every platform she'd monetized. No fireworks, just policy doing what policy does when you shine a light. First came the review, then the lock, then the demonetize. The glossy grid went dim around the edges. She posted a Notes app apology to the cancer community, lowercase and late, the kind of sorry that smells like smoke rather than ash. Comments split, half finally, half leave her alone. I didn't answer any of it. This wasn't personal anymore. It was plumbing. Lies clog systems. You clear them or the whole house stinks. I closed the file and took a breath that felt a shade cleaner. One card removed, the stack shivered. You don't win by shouting down a rumor. You win by making it unprofitable. If you want a lock to turn, sometimes you buy the door. The owner of Veronica's firm was a decent man with tired eyes and a fishing boat he never used. He talked about legacy. I talked about buyout. We met in a conference room that smelled like stale coffee and old ambition. I offered twice fair value and a closing date measured in days, not months. He blinked like he'd seen a sunrise from the wrong window, then shook my hand. Paper moved. Pen scratched. A notary stamped the air flat. When it was done, I could feel the balance change under my boots. I didn't swing by with a victory lap. I scheduled an all-hands for Monday and stood where the owner stands. Veronica walked in late, spotted me at the head of the table and froze. I kept my voice even, businesslike. Team, meet your new leadership. Veronica, I nodded to the front row. Welcome aboard. A beat. Hello, employee Veronica. The room learned a new silence. Silence has an address. Hers was in the basement. Fluorescent lights, thin carpet, a desk that wobbled if you breathed hard. HR called it a reassignment. I called it accountability. I set clear metrics, timesheets that match clocks, budgets that match receipts, campaigns that actually sell. No late-night client dinners, no company cards for personal storms. Her first task? Vendor cleanup, spreadsheet rows instead of ribbons and champagne. She sat straight, jaw tight, learning the taste of plain work. Before I left, I set an envelope on her desk. Inside, printouts, emails, transfers, hotel folios, the kind of paper that corners a person without raising your voice. On the flap, one line in black ink, "Don't lie again." She read it twice, then tucked the envelope into a drawer like it might rattle. I took the stairs two at a time and felt no triumph, just a kind of order settling in. Revenge is loud, consequences organized. We were done with noise. It was time for systems. Systems don't work without truth, so I closed the door and set the red folder between us. I didn't raise my voice. I walked her through the timestamps, emails at midnight, hotel folios after client dinners, transfers from the marketing budget that always landed where the rent was due. She tried on explanations like dresses, too tight, too shiny, none of them fit. Tears came, not the kind that clean a wound, the kind that fog a mirror. "I'll quit," she whispered, reaching for dignity like a purse she'd lost. I slid the folder closer. "Quitting is a getaway," I said. "This is a classroom." She stared at the carpet, shoulders shaking, mascara writing new lines on an old face. "What do you want?" The answer had been growing in me for years. "Accountability," I said. "You don't get to vanish when the bill arrives." Her chin lifted, a flicker of the old ice. "So what now?" I stood, opened the door. "Quit? No. Stay. And remember." Memory does the heavy lifting when pride won't. Days blurred into a quiet rhythm. Derek listing golf clubs and watches online, Veronica's smile cracking at staff meetings, Tiffany's ad revenue drying up like a summer creek. I didn't post victories or collect told-you-sos. I paid my utilities, answered emails, and kept my calendar clean. People think revenge is noise. Turns out it's gravity. You stack enough truth, and things fall on their own. At the grocery store, a neighbor who hadn't met my eyes in 3 years asked about the weather. I told him it looked like rain. In the mirror, I checked for gloating and found none. Just a man with sleep he'd earned. The strangest part wasn't their loss. It was my quiet. I thought payback would taste like fireworks. It tasted like tap water, plain, necessary, honest. I let it sit on my tongue and did not celebrate. The work wasn't finished. The lesson wasn't over. Lessons spread faster than rumors when you feed them facts. Derek reached out through a mutual, voice low, pockets empty, offering context for a price. I didn't haggle. I documented. Dates, amounts, names that matched the red folder in my desk like teeth in a zipper. Daniel's team cross-checked bank trails with vendor logs, travel receipts with calendar blocks. When the lines straightened into a single road, we handed the map to the people paid to drive it. I didn't enjoy the email to the detective. I made it tight. No adjectives, just evidence. That night, the house hummed like it knew something was headed for daylight. In the morning, a cruiser rolled slow past my window. 2 officers walked up Veronica's steps, the knock polite and final. Curtains twitched up and down the block. From my porch, I saw the moment the story changed owners. I sipped coffee and stayed seated. You don't chase justice. You set the table and let it sit down. News vans love a reversal, and this one wrote itself. The same anchors who'd wrinkled their noses at my name now practiced concern into the lens. Local marketing manager, arrested in embezzlement case. Approx. $15,000 misused. The number was small by TV standards, big enough for handcuffs. The Chiron tried on drama, then settled for math. I leaned against the counter and watched the segment play side by side with last month's headlines. The contrast was loud. A clip of me walking into court cut to a shot of Veronica stepping into the back of a cruiser, her blazer suddenly the wrong color for the weather. The anchor cleared his throat and landed the line that stuck. Not a fake cancer after all, just real receipts. I turned the volume down and looked at the living room that had held so much noise. The quiet felt different, less like a vacuum, more like a cleared field. You could plant things in this. Fields still need fences. Daniel's PI called with a voice built for bad news. Your boy bought a bus ticket. Tonight. I pictured Derek at the station. Duffel bag, sunglasses after sunset, the smell of sorry not even cologne can hide. We didn't rush. We coordinated. Time, bay number, a camera that saw everything around the vending machines. I drove by slow and didn't stop. Some goodbyes you let the city handle. The tip went where it needed to. 2 uniforms were waiting when he stepped through the automatic doors. He looked smaller without the watch, younger without the swagger, older under the lights. They asked questions that have only one legal answer. He tried to bargain with air. The duffel hit the floor. The cuffs clicked once, calm as a seatbelt. My phone buzzed. He's in custody. I exhaled and checked the time. Countdown over. Not with fireworks, but with a simple fact. You can't outrun a paper trail that's already arrived. You can't outrun paperwork, and you can't monetize apologies forever. A month later, Daniel called with the update. The feds offered Tiffany probation, restitution, community service, the kind of deal that sounds soft until you put it on every calendar you own. She posted another apology, this one longer, lowercase again, a few words about learning and impact. I watched with the sound off. My thumb hovered over the comment box and didn't move. No victory lap, no clever dunk. She'd repay what she took, and she'd live with what she broke. That's a sentence too. Quiet, public, daily. I closed the app and poured coffee I didn't need, listening to the house breathe. There's a part of every man that wants to swing until the room agrees. I let that part sit in the chair and cool. Mercy isn't weakness, it's a choice with teeth. I set the mug down and answered nobody. The moment held steady. I wouldn't hit back. I'd let consequence finish the job. When the noise dies, the house tells the truth. Mine spoke in soft groans, the sagging sofa, the duct-taped coffee table, the vent that rattled when the furnace tried its best. I sat where I'd sat through chemo naps and overdue notices, where the walls learned my breath. No headlines, no phones, just a man and 4 tired corners. I could still see the ring mark on the table, a faded circle that used to feel like a wound and now read like a mile marker. I let my shoulders drop, counted the seconds between the fridge's hum and the furnace kicking on, and remembered what quiet costs. The room didn't celebrate me for winning. It asked if I could live with myself after. I clicked the lamp off and let the dark come all the way in. The house shrank to heartbeat and air. In that empty, a simple sound rose up and filled the space. Steady, durable, mine. I turned my head and listened. I'm still here. Still here doesn't mean at peace. Word got around. The sideways looks faded. My name stopped dragging a question mark. Reputation stitched itself back together with small threads. Nods at the gas station. A thank you from a clerk who'd believed the worst and now chose better. But nights stayed long. I'd wake at 2, sit on the edge of the bed, and discover the old ache pacing the hall. It turns out revenge has an aftertaste, metallic, clean, and somehow empty. I walked past the mirror and didn't recognize the man who'd executed a plan so neat it left no fingerprints. Pride clapped politely. Purpose stayed seated. I poured water, set the glass down, and caught my reflection floating over the sink. Thinner, older, honest. I won, I said, low enough not to wake the house, but I can't find myself. The words didn't echo. They landed and waited. Some victories ask for a sequel. Mine wanted a reason. When you can't find yourself, borrow the eyes of someone who believed in you first. I pulled out Dr. Chen's file, the letter about the estate, the notes he'd left about fighters who go alone, his quiet insistence that surviving without a net is a kind of work. The paper felt heavy with a stranger's hope. I pictured him in a lab, chasing a cure with the patience of a farmer, sowing grants and harvesting data, and somewhere in that storm, he'd thought of a man like me. The money matters, sure, but the meaning, why me, why now, pressed harder. I read his words until the room slowed, then set the letter down and placed my palm over his name. Not a prayer, a promise. The anger that had powered the last few months eased back like a tide. This inheritance wasn't a trophy. It was a tool. "Thank you," I said into the quiet. "I won't waste this." My hand stayed where it was, steady, grateful, ready. Clarity arrived in plain language. I saw the staircase I'd climbed without knowing. Survival first, ramen, gas money, breath. Then safety, no collectors, no red stamps. Then love, the kind that left. Then respect, a verdict that said I wasn't crazy. And finally meaning, something bigger than my name on a deed. I walked the kitchen like it was a map, touching each station of the old life. The pantry where I kept the cheap noodles. The drawer with the last overdue notice. The table that learned to hold bad news and good coffee. I thought about the men I'd driven at 3 a.m., exhausted, broke, scared, and the families sitting under hospital lights doing math no human should do. Wealth had given me choices. The only one that felt right was giving some away. "Maybe I was chosen to pass it on," I said, testing the words for cracks. They held. I grabbed a notebook and wrote 3 lines. "Help the fighters. Keep it quiet. Start now." Meaning needs a name, so I gave it one, the Solo Fighters Fund. It wasn't revenge money anymore. It was redemption money. Help the fighters. Keep it quiet. Start now. Simple, honest. I wrote the mission in plain talk I could read at 3 a.m. Help patients who are fighting without a net. Priority 1, hospital bills that stack higher than hope. Priority 2, a roof and a warm bed near the clinic, because healing doesn't happen in a cold car. No red tape that punishes the sick for being sick. I sketched the intake, a short form, a call with a human, a promise to move fast. Then I wrote the rule that matters most. No press unless it serves the next patient. This wasn't about polishing my name. It was about light bills and co-pays and breathing. I printed the charter, stared at the space for a signature, and felt the old engine in my chest turn over. The pen scratched my name across the line. The room didn't cheer. It brightened. Hope isn't loud. It's a document you're not afraid to sign. A fund is a plan. It needs a compass. I scrolled to Dr. Martinez and hit call, hearing the same steady tone that once read my labs without flinching. "Doctor, I'm building something for the ones who don't have a ride home," I said. "Who needs us first?" Papers rustled. She didn't sell stories. She named people. A single dad from Lima, a waitress from Springfield, a vet whose VA paperwork was stuck in molasses. She offered to loop in a social worker, a nurse navigator, 2 case managers who never sleep. Names became notes. Notes became a list that felt like a map. Counties, distances, costs. "We can start Monday," I said, surprised at how easy those words left my mouth. "We can start today," she answered, and for a second the room stretched wide open. I put the call on speaker and began a draft email to the team we hadn't hired yet. The phone rang again. Another clinic. Doors were opening. When doors open, you go thank the rooms that held you up. I walked back into the rusty nail with the easy gait of a man not hiding from his history. Tommy, sleeves rolled, gave me that chin-up hello men use when they mean it. The beer tasted different, less like a bandage, more like a handshake. I asked for the old tab from the winter I couldn't afford heat and pride at the same time. Tommy pulled a notebook, found my name, and tried to wave me off. I didn't let him. I paid twice, then tipped heavy for all the quiet he'd given me when I had nothing worth saying. He slid a coaster across the bar with a black Sharpie note, still standing. I smiled and left it there, ringside up. On my way out, I took one last look at the corner booth where things had broken and fixed themselves. The room hadn't changed. I had. That's enough. Hospitals smell like bleach and resolve. I walked the oncology floor without a camera, without a speech, and let the hum of machines reset my heartbeat. Plastic chairs, scuffed baseboards, a bulletin board with old holiday flyers curling at the edges. In a bay near the window, a man about my age sat alone, hand shaking around a styrofoam cup. No ring, no backpack. Just that hollow look people get when they've done too much math. I didn't ask questions. I parked in the next chair and let silence do the heavy lifting. After a while, he said his name like a secret he wasn't sure he should share. I nodded and told him mine. We talked about trucks and baseball, how vending machines always eat your last dollar, and how winter in Ohio always comes early. A nurse checked his line. I offered a half smile and got one back. Some help is a check. Some help is a chair that doesn't leave. The first letter landed on cheap paper with careful handwriting. Toledo, single, stage 2, final notice past due, heat threatened to be cut the same week as treatment. I read it twice to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. No drama, just need. The math was obvious and cruel. Pay rent or buy medicine. Sleep warm or stay alive. I printed the form, called the number, and listened to a tired voice apologize for asking. Don't, I said. You're not asking for a favor, you're accepting a promise. We verified what needed verifying. Then I opened the fund portal and typed the first order. Cover the full round. Pay the landlord. Clear the utility. The confirmation dinged like a small bell in an old church. I pictured a lamp clicking on in a cold apartment and a hand unclenching around a pill bottle. Healing doesn't happen in headlines. It happens in rooms that stay warm. You're covered, I said. All of it. The letter from Toledo wasn't the only one. A nurse flagged a case at the clinic. A 45-year-old dad, 2 little kids, night shift at the warehouse, chemo on his lunch break. I brought coffee that didn't taste like hospital, and we sat by the window where the parking lot salt turns white in winter. He talked about missing school plays, the price of brake pads, and how his youngest still sleeps with a stuffed bear that's seen better days. He laughed once, then covered his face like the sound embarrassed him. I knew that laugh. I wore it for years. I saw the same stubborn fear in his eyes, the kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. and counts what you can't control. When the pump beeped, he looked at the floor. I looked at him and saw myself from back then, thin, tired, showing up anyway. We've got you, I said, simple and firm. In that moment, the room held 2 fighters, not one. Driving home, I started a letter to Veronica in my head. Sharp words polished over months, a final cut I thought I deserved. I sat at the table and wrote it out by hand, front and back, the kind of truth that bruises on purpose. The ink dried. My pulse didn't. I read the first line again and felt nothing good. I tore it down the middle, then again, until the pile looked like confetti from the wrong parade. The trash can swallowed it whole. I opened the fund dashboard instead. A single mom in Findlay needed help with gas in a motel near the cancer center. A retired machinist in Xenia was choosing between insulin and heat. I approved both, then added a week for the motel. The anger didn't vanish. It stood up and left the room. My hands settled, my jaw unclenched. I didn't send pain back where it came from. I sent help forward. That felt like winning. The next morning brought her name on my screen, small and insistent. I let it ring once, twice, then answered because ghosts don't leave if you don't open the door. Her voice was careful, thinner than I remembered. She said she was sorry for how things looked, said Derek. Made everything worse, said we. Could talk. Blame is a cheap coat. It fits anyone for a minute. I let her finish and counted to 5. Listen, I said, even and plain. I carried my choices. You have to carry yours. She tried for another angle. Memories, promises, the kind of soft that used to work. It didn't. If you need a list of what to do next, I added, start with accountability. The line went quiet enough to hear both of us breathing. Take care, I said, and ended the call. No slam, no speech, just a door closed with the right amount of force. The past stayed where it belonged, behind me. After that call, the house felt different, lighter, like it finally exhaled. I cracked the windows and let a Midwest morning roll in, cold, clean air that smells like cut grass and old rain. The curtains lifted, then settled, the way a chest does when the coughing stops. Dust floated in a sunbeam over the table I'd patched with duct tape a dozen times. I pulled the tape up, sanded the scar, and screwed down a new plank until it sat flush. The drill whirred, wood dust gathered in my palm, and for once the fix felt final. I wiped the frames, put the best husband mug back on a higher shelf. Not a trophy, not a wound, just a cup. Outside, a neighbor waved without flinching. Inside, the room looked honest. Work boots by the door. Mail stacked, not threatening. The kind of quiet that earns its keep. I stood back, took it in, and nodded. Some repairs are for the house. Some are for the man. With the windows open and the table solid, I tried on a different name in my head. Not patient, not X, not anyone's target. Just Ethan. The man who shows up, keeps his word, and lets the noise burn out on its own. I didn't check on Derek. I didn't search Tiffany. I didn't wonder what Veronica told her friends. I made coffee, answered 3 emails from the fund, and drove across town to buy space heaters for a family whose furnace died in January. No press, no post, just a receipt and a trunk full of warmth. On the way back, the Ford's engine hummed the kind of tune only an old truck can make, earned and steady, and I caught my reflection in the rear view, the scars, the lines, the eyes that finally matched the voice in my chest. Respect, I said out loud, testing the word. It fit. Pride didn't shout. It nodded. Self-respect came home, set its bag down, and stayed. Word travels different when it's useful. A small paper reporter ran a piece on the Solo Fighters Fund. No gossip, no rewind on my courtroom mess, just a straight story with photos of patients smiling like they finally took a full breath. The headline was plain. The quotes were from nurses, not talkers. My phone started buzzing again, this time with receipts. Small donations from names I didn't know, 20 here, 50 there, the kind of money that means groceries got a little tighter so someone else could sleep warm. A TV producer called, angling for a sit-down with dramatic lighting. I said no. Let the fund talk, I told her. She paused like she wasn't used to that answer, then wished me well. Expectations flipped. No victory pose, no profile shot, just work. I shut the laptop and stood in the doorway, feeling the house nod. The story felt cleaner when it wasn't about me. The climax was simple. I chose quiet over spotlight, and the mission grew. Quiet has a way of bringing people back. That afternoon, a knock came soft as rain. Mrs. Donnelly from 2 houses down stood there with a foil-covered pie and a look that had taken years to build. I should have checked on you back then, she said, cheeks pink. I'm sorry. We both laughed at the awkwardness and stepped into it anyway. Her husband used to shovel my sidewalk after storms. He's gone now. Grief recognizes its own. She asked about the fund. I asked about her grandkids. We weren't fixing history. We were sanding it smooth. I set the pie on the counter, brewed coffee, and we sat at the kitchen table like neighbors are supposed to. Elbows on wood, steam in the air, small stories that mean more than they sound. When she left, she hugged me quick, the way people do when they're brave enough to say what they should have said years ago. The climax wasn't tears. It was a seat and 2 warm mugs. When the door clicked shut, the house settled into a peace I could trust. The fund app blinked with new donations, little green dots like fireflies in July. I let the numbers glow and didn't chase them. The TV stayed dark. The phone went face down. I opened the junk drawer and felt around until my fingers found the familiar circle of old gold. The ring was colder than I remembered, lighter, like a story that finally ran out of pages. I turned it once in my palm, then set a small wooden box on the table, the kind you keep letters in. No speech, no curse, no victory anthem. Just a breath, a choice, and a hinge. I laid the ring inside, closed the lid, and felt something unhook in my chest. The house didn't cheer. It exhaled. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, then quit. I washed the cup, turned off the light, and let the night belong to itself. The image held, a box, a breath, and quiet. The night held still after the box closed, and I finally understood the math of my life. I lost a marriage, time, hair, sleep, whole seasons that won't come back. But I didn't lose myself. I'm the man who kept showing up when the room was empty. The victim became the victor, sure, but the win wasn't a headline or a bank balance. It was meaning. It was a light bill paid for a stranger, a warm bed near a clinic, a father making it to chemo and back to his kids. That's the story I choose to keep writing, quietly, daily, with both hands. The Solo Fighters Fund is the road forward, not my trophy shelf. If you've ever fought alone, I see you. Drop a comment. Still standing. Or choose your side and tell me why. Forgive or revenge. Hit subscribe if you want the rest of this journey. The hard days, the good work, the real endings. I'm still here. And now, I'm here for someone else.